Hi, welcome to Gospel with Greg. And in the video today, I'm going to be addressing the question of is gossiping a sin? So, I've talked about gossiping in my videos on things that hurt our witness and things that we should avoid to have peace of mind. And gossiping is something that's very easy to do, maybe something, we do and don't even realize we're doing. So I think that makes it important for us to address it. And so the short answer first is absolutely it can be a sin and a very easy one to commit, and it's best to just avoid it. So that's kind of the short answer. We'll look at the more in-depth reason of why. So starting off in Proverbs chapter 16, verse 28. A forward man soweth strife, and a whisperer separateth chief friends. And so this warns against, this verse and chapter warns against sowing discord and highlights that it can have ill effects. And, gossiping in general just has a negative connotation that involves, sharing negative, private, or shocking information about someone that may or may not be true. There are some people that will have others gossip about them and spread rumors that aren't even true. Maybe there's some kind of gossip that ruins their reputation and they didn't even do it. So, that makes it particularly bad. And that's one reason we should avoid it. Even if we're not the one to start the gossip, we're just repeating the story we heard. For all we know, the story somebody told us and the gossip might not even be true. But, even if it is, it can just amplify whatever problems are already there. Just make the problem even more severe by, spreading it to more people, getting more people involved that don't need to be involved with it, and heightening emotions more and just dragging out the problem to make it last longer. And that's just not a good thing. Also, when it comes to gossiping, it can make you look bad as the gossiper. You know, I think that people that constantly gossip can make themselves look immature, can make them look judgmental, and it can make them even kind of look unintelligent, like they can't figure out what they shouldn't say out loud. And, overall, gossip really isn't compatible with the overall mindset of having joy and love that we're supposed to have as Christians. And um, it's really not conducive to addressing problems either, because sometimes, unfortunately, problems do come up and we have to deal with them, but gossip's not the way to do it. And to address that point, I want to look at Matthew chapter 18, verses 15 through 17. And I've referenced this a couple times in other videos. And this is Jesus speaking in this passage. Moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, go and tell him his fault between thee and him alone. If he shall hear thee, thou hast gained thy brother. But if he will not hear thee, then take with thee one or two more, that in the mouth of one or two, or in the mouth of two or three witnesses, every word may be established. And if he shall neglect to hear them, tell it unto the church. But if he neglect to hear the church, let him be unto thee as an heathen man and a publican. And so this goes to show that, that even someone having done something wrong doesn't give us a right to just go around and gossip to other people about them and just slew their name to others. There's a procedure on how to take care of it biblically that puts dealing with the problem front and center. And gossip is more just about making other people, get on your side and to not like someone you've decided you don't like. And like I said, this procedure Jesus gave us is conducive to dealing with what the problem is. Gossip just tends to make the problem even worse, which is quite the opposite of what we should be striving for. And, so we shouldn't be too trigger happy to just run and tell whatever the issue is to others that have nothing to do with it. And, generally, it doesn't lead to anything good. and can cause huge issues. I've seen people that have had their reputations ruined by gossip, and fractured relationships, including in churches, unfortunately, that never got restored even years later. So gossip, can have a very deep and deep impact, far beyond what we might even think it can have in the moment. And so this leads to, what practices should we avoid? Because like I said, gossip can be really easy to fall into, and we might not even think of that's what we're doing in the moment. Um, because it can be tricky to, for us to navigate sometimes what's considered gossiping and what isn't. Um, and that's something that, if you struggle with this or you're concerned about, am I doing that? Definitely pray to God about it, because God's not going to give you incorrect guidance on that. But here are some general things that are helpful to think about, when it comes to navigating, if you're falling into gossip or not. Um, so, spreading information about people that you don't know if it's true or not, that's something that's best to avoid. If it's something that's going to make somebody look bad, you especially don't even know if it's true or not, it's best to not go around and tell that to people. Because it's almost every time it's going to be one of those things where it's like, what was the point of it? Did you really even need to tell other people that? Another thing is, it's best to avoid, um, telling sensitive or private information without the person's permission first that could embarrass them. So, maybe it's what you're spreading isn't something bad they've done, but it is still something that's kind of private, that could potentially embarrass them or just be something they don't want people to know. And so, it can be good to kind of pump the brakes on that. Of, could this make the person uncomfortable, if they were to find out later that I went and told, their business, to other people. Another thing, to avoid is, uh, telling things that will make others think less of someone when it's not part of a process to solve a problem. Because, like I, said when I quoted that verse from Jesus, there is a time to get others involved, if the person just won't stop what they're doing. Particularly in a church setting, maybe you get more of the leadership involved and everything. But just going around and telling it to Joe Schmo that has nothing to do with the situation, or it's not a practical thing to tell them to help, solve the issue. It's best to avoid that when you're going around just solely talking bad about the person just to get others to think bad about them. That's not good. Jesus tells us multiple times that we need to forgive others, forgive even our enemies. And when we're going around and bashing and slewing their name to others, that's not a sign of forgiving them and showing love to them that we should strive, to do. If we're concerned about somebody, talk to God about them. Don't go around and whisper around town to everybody about them. Talk to God about them and say, Lord, they need your help. And, help them, if they don't serve God, pray, Lord, send someone to be a light to them, including me. Put your words in my mouth if you would have me witness to them, because ultimately I want to see them stop doing that harmful thing they're doing, and, become who you would have them to be. So that's what we need to do. And there are also just questions we can ask ourselves. If there's something about someone else that we're, thinking about telling to others, we could ask ourselves, do you know if the information's true? Is it necessary for you to tell others what you know about this person? What do you hope to accomplish by telling others? Would you want someone to go around and tell these things about you if you were in their shoes? So, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Um, does the potential gain of telling others outweigh the problems you telling it might cause? And so those are some general guiding things we can keep in mind. And those have been some questions that have helped me realize that, you know what, it's best for me to just keep quiet about this for situations I've been in before. And it just ended up avoiding a lot of trouble and turmoil. And so, hope this video was helpful for someone. And until next time, God bless.